Hello and very warm welcome to Dr. Ahmed YouTube channel. In today's video, we shall be discussing Toni Morrison's novel, Beloved, as a postmodern novel. In what ways it is postmodern and in what ways it diverges from that and has got its unique qualities. This is what we shall be talking about in today's video. Postmodern novel, Beloved as a postmodern novel. When we consider this, we first of all see that Toni Morrison had subverted some of the literary conventions, and she has also changed the narrative strategies. So, by doing so, she not only is able to attach herself with the modern and postmodernist traditions, but also she has given her own input how her type of postmodernism can be there inside the novel she is writing. And as a result, she provides to the novel and the text as the diverse experience of African culture. As she is herself the African American citizen, so she is able to talk about the African people, their experiences, and their culture. So that is very dominantly available. Alongside that, how these Africans are represented in American literature in American countries, that also has been critiqued by her. She also talks about the intertextuality and leaves many open ended interpretations in her novel. So these are some of the basic points on which Beloved has been turned into or can be deemed as the postmodern novel. Some of the techniques which, if we talk about Toni Morrison, are that she has tried to expand or change or liquidify the boundaries of modernism and postmodernism. She is using postmodernism or she's using modernism not in the strict limited sense of the word, but also she makes changes in that, and as a result, she pushes these boundaries forward sometime. And while doing so, she is able to create some type of modernism alienating, and then she rejects that one as well. According to her, man is not alienated from himself, and then she rejects, however, the subject and doesn't talk in terms of the fragmentation of the subject. She continues with that and tries to say that, okay, individuals have their selves and they are connected with each other, and in that way she tries to preserve the true self of the individuals as well as that of the community. So in this way, this technique of differing with the established canons of postmodernism and modernism, she has provided her own style of writing modernism in her text. Look at the kind of things she does. For example, her narrative is fragmented. There's a lot of change. It's not the straight linear type of narrative. It is fragmented most of the time, which is a characteristic of postmodernism. Multiplication of voices is also available in her novel, because we can see that many people speak and many type of voices they read. This type of writing which she is giving to her readers is the participatory type of reading. It's not simply the one person who is writing and giving meaning to the text, it's the reader also who can give the meanings to the text. There are multiple narratives, stories, and within the stories are present, as is the characteristics of post-colonial as well as postmodern writing. Same is the case here. We can find, therefore, because of the multiplicity of the narratives, that we have the plural and multiple identities of the characters and the people inside the novel. That is why, because of all these situations, we can feel the displaced consciousness as well as the decentered consciousness. That is a type of modernism and postmodernism she is using inside her novels. We can see, for example, one of the text pieces here is the writer says, Fifth, Denver and Beloved talk and speak to each other by using one voice. Three women intertwine their memories, voices, and minds. Three women become as one. Beloved becomes Sith. Beloved is Denver. Sith is Beloved. Sith is Denver. Denver is Sith. And Denver is Beloved. Their identities blur into one as the voices of Sith, Denver, and Beloved merge together. These three voices are united as a unit. So one can see that from this paragraph that the narrators are multiple, stories are multi-level, and they are connected with each other. And frequently the roles change, and one seems to be merging into the other, another seems to be merging into the one or the second. So in that way also, this is one of the postmodern characteristics of our novel. Same is the case with the meaning. The meaning in her novel is fluid because of the postmodern technique. For example, throughout her novel, if you look at the narration, it gradually becomes complex and ambiguous. So, more the narrative is complex and ambiguous, is the meaning is less clear. It becomes fluid. For example, we can see that beloved monologue in the beginning is understandable, but with the passage of time, it becomes undecipherable, and that is the reflector of the fluidity of the meaning. Sometimes the writer uses the sentences in the text which are without any punctuation, and so again the meaning becomes a little bit difficult to understand. And as a result, what happens? She is able to fuse together multiple black voices, their minds, their identities, and create one self out of all these people. So we can find in her novel beloved the plural identities and the faces of the people. So therefore that goes to reflect how the postmodern characteristic, that is fluidity of meaning, is working inside that novel. The characters are also of the same nature. They seem to be controlling their narrations. For example, in part 1, we see that Sith tells Paul D why she killed her daughter during the attempted escape. But in the next part, we see Paul D himself narrating his dreadful escape and from the plant house and his lonely days of drifting outside. In the same way, in other parts, we see that Beloved presents her monologue as she remembers her terrifying experience during the passage on the slave ship, being piled up quickly with many other dead and the living bodies. Denver also speaks in the same way of her horrible childhood memories and miserable school life for years. But Baby Sooks talks about the clearing in the whole situation. We see that the characters are working on their own level, they're telling their story in their own way, though the theme may be one, but everyone is trying to tell the story in his own way. So they control their narration also, again, another characteristic of the postmodern fiction. The fragmentary and discontinuous narrations are most of the time available there. For example, if we look at the novel, we can see very clearly that black history comes back to life through the stories of each character. The characters tell their stories, as we see in the last slide, that these stories create the kind of history. I mean, the history of every individual and then the collective history of these black people as well. Every story implies a personal experience in the broken pieces or parts. One can see that even these stories are not linear. There are personal experiences, of course, but they are in broken pieces. They are not united and connected with each other. So that is why the postmodern characteristic of the fiction being fragmentary and discontinuous narration is available here. This Toni Morrison, for example, in her writing, continues to subvert some of the traditional conventions and canons. For example, she, instead of using the narrator as I or he or she uses the second person narrator, and as a result, she addresses the reader directly, and reader becomes the part and portion of the black story. You therefore becomes the link between the text and the reader, and as a result, reader seems to be playing a very active role and seems to be present there all the time. The reader therefore doesn't remain anymore a passive person, but rather becomes an active character. So that contribution of the reader into the text, the design which has been prepared by the writer, is again postmodern. Not only postmodern is in this sense, but also the diversity of the African American culture also makes it postmodern. It means that the plot, which is in this novel, is not linear. It is rather a type of fixed reality only in the past time, and the writer seems to be rewriting the old slave narratives, and as a result, it becomes a type of hybrid genre of a new slave narrative. I mean, the slaves of the past has become free people, but their stories keep on making them slaves, and so therefore they bring their past into the present, and that is why they have a new slave narrative that is being talked about by the writer in her novel that is Beloved. And in the same way, we have some of the structures which involve themselves into magical realism, one of the very important characteristic of the postmodern literature. The novel therefore is fusing two characteristics together of the narrative. One is the magic, other is the real. In this story, for example, if you see the Beloved, the novel, the text presents a fantasy world where the spiritual and the material seem to be blurring with each other, intermixing into each other. For example, we can see that living people are there, dead people are also there, but sometimes they go in the past and sometimes they come in the present and sometimes they seem to be in future as well. Therefore, magic realism becomes a type of, one can say, substitution of the whole narrative. Magic realism is beloved as the dead daughter of the Sith. We see it is present in her character. She's dead, but she is living as well. She is coming up again and again. But for this purpose, writer has not provided us any signifier or any signified in order to let us know. So that is why it's 100% magical realism quality used by the writer in her narration. There's a notion of intertextuality also as an essential part of the postmodern writings. For example, we can see the echo of number of other texts inside this novel. For example, the story of Margaret Garner, a slave who escaped from the owner. That event has been told in the novel. It has been told by reshaping it and making it as part of the history that has been rewritten in the American history pages also, and that is why it is reflected in the novel. As a narrative of defiance against the version of slavery, this text therefore becomes the authoritative version of slavery. It challenges the other kind of narratives of slavery in that way. So that intertextuality is therefore playing a very important role and part in making this novel a postmodern novel. One of the passages, for example, says that in epigraph of the novel we have the evidence that is dedicated to the 60 million black people who died during the passage trip to the new land and home of America. Beloved is not just a girl but symbolizes the black people. Beloved represents not only the spirit of Sith's daughter, she is also the projection of repressed collective memory of a violated people. So, in that way, one can easily understand the things which are said somewhere have been used inside the story in order to highlight the total reflection of the black people in their life, what has been happening with them through this symbol of beloved. And in the same way, we can also see that there are certain statements in the novel which are open-ended that invite our attention for the interpretation, and therefore there are many. For example, it's not possible to see what is the family background, what is the kind of we just need to open ourselves to the thing which are said and surmise about that, think about that. Nobody, for example, knew who is beloved, from where she has come, and what is the type of family she's having. And then this beloved same appears before us as a ghost, and nobody knows who she is. But sometimes she is the ghost of the unknown black people. She's the ghost of the baby daughter, Sith's baby daughter, or she can be a girl's lost girl's ghost also. So therefore, there are many chances that these things should be interpreted by the reader, and that is why there are many open-ended statements given by the writer to involve the reader. Again, this is some of the postmodern characteristic. And the last thing is the control of language. For example, beloved, the very word, refers to race, class, gender identities, age, nationality, and ethnicity, difference, power, and powerlessness. Similarly, the word nomos, for example, the power of the word, to help us name ourselves and shape our lives in the tradition of our own ancestors. Histories not told, retold, and then are the hidden histories, forgotten histories, invisible, unimportant, and changed. Such is the type of language used by her. This is what is called as refusal to read history as a linear or conventional. A type of non-linear history has been made into that. If we look at even the word beloved, it's a kind of new model of history. Beloved is one who resurrects itself and becomes the spirit of the ancestors of the black people in Africa. Beloved becomes the history of the unknown, but the rich testimony of black ancestry. So this is the way how the language has been used, how the control of language has been used, and that is again one of the things which the postmodern fiction has. So thank you very much for watching. Hope to see you in some next video. If you like this video, do not fail to hit the subscribe button as well as the like button, and therefore hope to see you in some next video. Thank you for watching.